Gangs of Sherwood is a baffling thing. You are the quartet of Robin Hood, Maid Marian, Little John, and Friar Tuck. Together you battle the Sheriff of Nottingham in a wild, dystopian ancient England full of science bordering on the realms of magic. It's a steampunk neon fantasy take on the IP that matches the all-over-the-place gameplay. Gangs of Sherwood made me feel a mix of appreciation that a game like this can exist and a befuddlement at many of its major design decisions. It's like a 2008 arcade game with no extra depth added to the home port, yet it isn't. It's a brand new 2023 console and PC title, and it's one of the least enjoyable things I think I've ever reviewed. As previously stated, you're Robin Hood's gang and you're going against the sheriff. It's a wild version of these characters with it's kind of, actually medieval cyberpunk. Major Oak is your home base where you'll spend time in between each mission leveling up, changing outfits, and that's about it. Every part of this game has the feeling of an old arcade title where the levels are pretty short, with a few checkpoints in each. Throughout everything, there is this feeling of a dark misery that is somehow then steeped in vibrant neon colors. It's a tonal mismatch with every character doing their worst Marvel-style quips as the townfolk are murdered by the dozen. Dead men hang from trees as Robin says a stupid line, and it's one of the most mind-numbingly boring experiences I can remember, which is a shame, as technically the game has some chops. While it's a bit fuzzy on Series X, it runs at a steady 60 FPS, and the animations look good, though you will end up seeing the same ones roughly 15,000 times if you play through the entire campaign. That's not a given with just how repetitive every part of it is. The tone is matched by a story that is flippant about the horrors going on around it because everyone can't stop cracking awful jokes. Occasionally, one of Maid Marian's 40-plus brothers, who are most of the main bosses by the way, will have a funny line or two, but outside of that, it's dreadful, and I had to play the game in short bursts because I found it so unpleasant to experience. There are 3 main acts with a handful of bosses to take on. Replayability comes in finding enough gold to upgrade each character, and you can change between them in between missions, but gold is only earned for each as you play them. You'll use that gold to buy moves and upgrades, and normally this type of progression system is solid. My issue with it here is how they held most of the fundamental parts of a game like this behind them. So you'll spend like your first 5 to 10-ish hours just pressing light attack until you build up your combo, then using right trigger to set it off. How this work will vary between each character, but it is the same monotonous feeling no matter who you play as. Gangs of Sherwood is a mission-based brawler with up to 4 players able to play together in co-op. Robin and Marian are small and can squeeze into tight places. Little John and Friar Tuck are big boys and can smash open or lift up certain areas, as most levels have these little side areas off the beaten path that give you chests filled with either per-run buffs or gold. Outside of that, you'll run, jump, and hit your way through a 10 to 15 hour campaign until you either fall asleep or smash your console out of frustration. And that's not that the game is difficult. Nay, its frustration is of missed potential. Because with a little more depth to its combat system and maybe entirely rewritten dialogue, this game would have been, a solid time with friends, instead of, even on heroic difficulty, being the easiest thing I've played this year, and the most boring. And I have played Gollum in some truly awful shit. None of them were as annoying to me as this one, simply because you can see the talent here. At times, it looks fantastic, and early on, some of the combos look and feel awesome. But once you've done that same attack 450 times, with no real reason to ever try anything else, it just ends up being miserable. After a few levels, even on heroic, I could 1 or 2-shot most bosses with a full stack of Marian's magnetic daggers. Huge end-of-act bosses would die in 15 seconds on heroic, whether solo or in co-op. The difficulty balance pass in this review version of the game is the most baby bitch difficulty I can remember, and I just played Super Mario Wonder, which was miles more difficult than Gangs of Sherwood. And even if the game was tougher, it wouldn't make up for how repetitive it all is. I would change characters often to try and fight that off, but I ended up giving up and just played Marian through as it let me get through the monotony a little more quickly. For differences, Robin Hood builds up golden arrows, Little John builds up a fire AoE, and Firetuck just smashes things with his hammer insanely fast. That's kind of the only difference. Everything else is just right bumper, right trigger over and over again. Eventually, you get unlocks like Rebel Mode, which makes the game even easier. I had more damage output, more heals, and the enemies were all the same in what they could do. As you progress through each level, you'll have a gang power meter that goes up as you murder, find stuff, or hit checkpoints. By the time you're at, say, 3, which is out of 4 total, I could one-shot pretty much anything with a full combo. It should be fun, like all the trappings are there, and I could just mute the voices and talk with friends if the combat had any depth, but it doesn't. Nothing in this game has any depth, and with shorter levels, I honestly think it would be an okay time at the arcades. The music's pretty well done, though it is very bright and cheery in a way that doesn't match the actual horror going on in front of you. In the game, though, it just ignores all that with its writing and major plot points anyway. Like Marion's quest to essentially murder her entire family line is a joke. It's a lark that she wants to end all of her brother's lives. And townsfolk are strung up in trees or burning in their homes. Well, sorry, we can't help you. We need to run to the next spot, joking as we go about how many guards we're killing. It's a, like, have your cake and eat it too issue where the game wants the sheriff and his lackeys to be pure evil, but the tone of everything else is really bright and cheery. And the voice acting's fine. It's let down by that god-awful writing, though, as quip after quip after quip just keeps hitting you and none of them ever land. It's not funny, but I could feel the talent of the people behind it doing their best to make it so. I also didn't run into any major bugs because, again, it feels like a well-made and pretty polished product. It's just one let down by some infuriating design choices that sabotage something that had the potential to at least be an okay co-op game. There are some wonderfully talented devs and voice actors that worked on this, and I do hope to see more from them with a better wrapping around it all in the future. And wrapping things up, Gangs of Sherwood was pretty fun for 15 minutes. Every second after that was a dreadful monotony that I cannot recommend to anyone living or dead.